Okay, I'm Boyd Clayton I'm the Deputy Director at the Division of Water Rights. I have two jobs. I actually have two small sections that I need to deliver information on, but mostly my job is to get you woke back up before you take the test. I'm old, and I know that the seat of my pants is directly connected to my eyes. I'm not offended if you feel like you need to stand up for a few minutes. That's just fine with me. So don't feel hesitant if you want to do that. I know we poured a lot of information into you over the last day, and you're trying to put all that back together. So let me just give you a quick recap here of some ideas and try to put what we've talked about together for a little bit. And I'd like to be a little bit interactive as we talk about this. So what is a water right and why do we have them? Just spent a whole day and a half talking about that. What is a water right? Anybody? Nobody's sure. Yes.
Isn't it a right to use the water for a beneficial use?
Good. So it's a right to divert public waters for some beneficial purpose. Okay. So if any of the waters of the state, above the ground or below the ground, you want to divert that water and use it for a beneficial purpose, you need a water right to do that. That's what a water right is in the state of Utah. Why do we have them? Okay. The answer I heard here was to prevent chaos so you don't get killed. Those are both very good reasons. And that's the reason, that was the issue I wanted to get to. In the eastern states, water is used, there are riparian rights to water, and I think that's what was talked about yesterday. If there's a water source adjacent to your land or on your land, you're entitled to use a reasonable amount of water from that source. And so you don't need a big water rights system to figure that out. If the water's there, whoever owns the land is going to use it, most likely. In the West, the water is mostly disparate from the lands that people want to use it on. And so we divert the water out of the rivers and place it on land. And so we need a system to do that in some orderly way so that we don't end up killing each other and we don't end up with a system where we can't ever depend on the water because we don't know who might come and take it before we can get to it. So that's why we have a water rights system in the state of Utah. Some states in the West have hybrid systems. California is one of those where they have both a riparian system and a prior rights system. Utah's is a prior rights system. And so when you get people coming from other states, oftentimes there will be some confusion because there will be a presumption if the stream runs through it, they have riparian rights. There is no riparian rights in Utah to water. All of it is based on prior appropriation. Okay? How do water rights vary and why? Well, I guess we kind of talked about that a little bit across the United States. There are different systems because there are different needs in different places. And our system is built to accommodate the needs in Utah. In our state, we've made the decision that all water will be appropriated and be part of the state system. In some other states, for instance, domestic use from wells is not regulated. And so you can just go out and drill a well. We made a decision way back that all of the water in Utah would be appropriated and be part of our water rights system. So the basic principles, this was supposed to be a good thing up here, but I can't see that far. Okay. In Utah, these are the basic principles that water is a public resource, that rights are limited by beneficial use. So you don't just get a right to a quantity of water, you get a right to use the water for some beneficial purpose. The right's revocable if not used. There's been a lot of discussion about forfeiture over the last 2 days. Beneficial use is a public use. The statutes are specifically construed to make the waters of the public available for beneficial purposes. And the whole goal is to use that water to help society, the place where we live, use the waters of the public or our state to help our state be successful and progress economically. So beneficial use is a public use because you help our state as you use that water beneficially. The statutes talk about riparian control is defeatable. So for instance, just because the river runs through your property doesn't mean someone can't divert that water on your property and take it somewhere else. In fact, through eminent domain, they can get right-of-way across your property so that they can divert that water and take it if they have a right to it. We all have a duty not to waste the waters or injure the waters, degrade them in quality. That's part of the statute, is that the water's to be used without waste. And water rights are conveyable in Utah. If you have a right, it's a right that you can convey to others freely. There are no restrictions on conveyance. So, well, I should say there is one restriction. Livestock watering rights. There's a restriction on conveying them to public land entities, so the BLM and the United States Forest Service. Whether it's constitutional, I don't know. But that was put in the statute a couple years ago. Other than that, there are no restrictions on conveyance of water rights. We just talked about, when do you need a water right?
If you want to use the water.
If you want to use the water. If you want to use public water, all water in the state is appropriated, okay? And so you need to have a right to use that water. How do you get a water right? What? Okay, so the default method is, if there's water in the source available to appropriate, is to make application with the state engineer to appropriate it. What if we've already said there's no more water available to appropriate, which is the case for most of the surface streams? Yeah, then you get out your wallet and find somebody who's willing to give up the right that they currently have to use and are willing to convey it to you. How don't you get a water right in the state of Utah? Okay, there are people who do that, okay, and believe that they have created a right because they just started taking it and they got away with it for a time. Yeah, what else might you get if you do that? Okay, you might have bodily injury if you interfere with someone. You also likely will eventually face us. The Division of Water Rights has enforcement authority, and so if there's a referral and someone reports that you're using water without right, we will go out and investigate, and if that's found to be true, there are significant penalties for doing that. There are monetary penalties, and so you'll be fined for the value of that water that you have illegally taken. So it's not a good path to follow, okay? For two reasons: because you want to live and you don't want to be broke the rest of your life. Okay, we talked quickly about there are several agencies in the state that deal with water. the Division of Water Rights, who put on this seminar the last 2 days, are in charge of regulation of diverting and use the waters of the state. We have a sister agency who's upstairs from us in this building on the 3rd floor, the Division of Water Resources. They have responsibility for water planning and water project development in the state. So if you need money, they're the people to go talk to build a project. If you need a water right, then you come to us, or you're having issues with water rights. There's also an agency that's in charge of the controlling pollutants in waters of the state. They aren't in the Department of Natural Resources, they're in the Department of Environmental Quality. So that's regulated as well. So there's some overlap, and there's a Division of Drinking Water there as well that deals specifically with people who provide water to the public and having safe systems to do that. The state engineer, and I missed the first hour yesterday, so I'm not sure if this was talked about, how the state engineer gets his job, but he's appointed by the governor for 4-year terms that run concurrent with the governor. During the time of his appointment, he can't be removed unless there's cause, and so the idea is to insulate him from the political moves of the state once he's in place, because water becomes a very controversial issue at times. And so the state engineer's appointment is intended to isolate him somewhat from the political system once he's appointed. He's a professional engineer, and the division, all of us staff, are there to serve him and help him accomplish his job. All of the statutes are written as instructions to the state engineer about what he's to do. And as a consequence, we issue all the decisions that come out of the division as coming from the state engineer. He signs most of them. The ones that he doesn't sign, we sign for him under his authority. And because of that, there isn't superior agency review to state engineer decisions. He serves without a board. If you don't like what he did, you don't go to the department director, you don't go to the governor, because those aren't superior agencies that can review his decision. You can request reconsideration from the state engineer. If you're not satisfied with what happens there, your recourse is to appeal to the district court. Okay, we talked about that, and I heard that talked about yesterday. I wanted to make you aware, I didn't get it in my presentation, but I wanted to make you aware of, there's a couple of things, I think maybe we've touched on them all, but just remind you of all the things state engineer does. The primary thing that he's charged with is to keep and maintain records on water rights. Our whole application system is designed to develop a record of water rights. That's why the application process exists, is so that there could be records of water rights created. He has responsibility to make application decisions, to distribute the water from the natural sources, to assist the courts in general adjudications, to develop groundwater management plans, to manage the groundwater within its safe yield, to regulate the safety of water impounding structures. I don't think we've talked about that in the last 2 days, but we have a dam safety program that regulates the safety of water impounding structures. He permits the alteration of natural streams. That's one of the topics I'll talk about in just a minute. And he collects and validates records of water use. He licenses water well drillers. He licenses or regulates the use of geothermal fluids, and he has authority in some instances to enforce the statutes. Okay. We've talked about the informal administrative process that's used by our office, that you file an application, we give notice. If there are protests filed, we may hold a hearing. We then study the issues. We will make a decision. There's an opportunity for reconsideration if you want to petition for that, or to seek de novo review in the courts. At that point, that it's the applicant's responsibility to develop the water and provide proof that they've done that, and then we issue a certificate that removes you from further administrative oversight of that application. The issuing of a certificate makes that water right a vested right. Originally, let me go back here for a second. Originally, when the application system was developed, the idea was that once a certificate was issued, people would record those with the county recorder, and the county recorder would become the office of record. Up until that point, applications were maintained by the state engineer, and if you needed to change title, then you changed it with the state engineer. A few years ago, it was decided that we should change that system a little, and we'll talk a little more about that, but it kind of made some things easier and confused some other things. But that was the way the system was initially intended to work, was that you would make application with the state engineer, the water right would stay under his authority until it was vested or perfected, and if it lapsed because of failure to put it to use, it would never become a vested water right. And then when it was certificated, the certificate would be recorded in the county, and then title would be maintained through the county recorder. Okay. We talked a little bit yesterday about water appropriation policies. I think James showed you where you can find those on our website. All of the appropriation policies for all the areas in the state are on our website. You can go see those policies. I want you to understand that appropriation policies are not rules. There's a formal means to establish rules in the state of Utah that they then have the force of law. Policies are not rule. What they are is statements by the state engineer of his understanding of the nature of the science and the situation on the ground in those areas, and therefore the course that he intends to take on applications in that area. So if he says that the area is close to appropriation, what he's telling you is that in his mind there is no more water to appropriate. Obviously, if you want to establish a case that there is water, you can go build that case. He will probably still, and you would present that when you file an application. If you convince him, he might approve the application. More than likely, he won't, unless you've really persuaded him to change his view, and then he probably will update his appropriation policy. But they aren't rule, and if you still believe you have a case, you can take your rejection to the courts and have them hear that issue de novo and try to convince the court that he doesn't properly understand the science. Because it isn't law, it's not rule, it's just his view on the state of things. That's what appropriation policies are. We talked a little about duty. Duty is the amount of water that is reasonably necessary for a particular use. Okay? Duties can change over time and have changed in some things as practice change changes. And the courts have suggested that what's reasonable changes, and as what is reasonable changes, the state engineer should change duties so that we don't waste water. Okay. Depletion is the amount of water that during the use will be lost from the system to generally evaporation. So whether it's irrigation and the water's transpired, or it's a power plant that uses heat and the water is evaporated in the process of generating electricity, that's depletion. Okay? All right. Oh, I meant to correct two other things that have been said in the course of the 2 days that aren't correct. I guess it's best that I do that here because I didn't have that written down. One of them is that John Mann told you that if you file with an irrigation company, you have shares in an irrigation company, and you want to file a change application, and you present your change application to them, and if they don't make a decision within 120 days, your application is deemed denied. That is incorrect. The law changed a year ago. If they don't do anything with your change application on a share of stock, the application is deemed approved by the irrigation company. So if you're a member of an irrigation company board and you're still under the delusion that you can just say nothing, that's a bad idea. Okay, that changed last year.
I'm going to say that sounded like a hell of a long time to wait to find out that they've ignored you forever.
Yeah, and that has been the practice until last year. But last year the legislature said they didn't like that result, and so they changed the statute so that if you don't say anything within 120 years, you've just consented to the application. Okay. The other one that I wanted to make you aware of is Mike Handy, in talking about adjudication, told you about the practice that has been in place up until this year. There was significant revision made to the adjudication statute this year, and the whole goal of those changes are to make adjudication more interactive with the water users. And so beginning in May, the statutes will completely change the duty of water users. When we give notice of an adjudication in an area, you have 90 days to file your claim. If you don't do that, you will get knocked out right at the beginning of the adjudication. Okay, he talked about we'll come around and find you and we'll help you make a claim. That will change beginning in May. We will give you notice that you need to file a claim, and that's our duty. Your duty is to file a claim and let us know that you claim water. So there'll be more education that goes on about that in the coming months. And as we come into areas with adjudication, we will hold meetings and explain that. But you need to understand the way we were going with adjudication was moving so slowly and taking so many resources that the legislature decided this year to change that and put more burden back on the water users to come forward and let us know that you're there so that we can get adjudication done. So, all right, on to water right title. Water right title is a complex topic. I will let you know right now that if you really want to know very much about water right title, we teach a very good class on that exact topic, and you'll spend a half day doing that at least, and we'll give you a manual about that thick. So I'm going to catch some of the high points today. You will not leave this class being a water right title expert. If you want to be a water right title expert, you need to go to the other class. Okay? So we talked about that where water rights come from. They come from applications to appropriate. They also may come from pre-statutory use if you were using water prior to 1903, surface water, or groundwater prior to 1935, you may have a diligence claim because at that time all you had to do was put the water to use, but that claim may not be recorded anywhere. If you're lucky, you have recorded it with us and there's a record of it, but some of those claims have never been recorded. There are also decrees out there. We've tried, as we find the decrees, to assimilate those into our process, but private decrees happen separate from our office, and so there may be a decree out there that isn't reflected in our records. I think Teresa talked about some of those this morning. There are also Federal Reserve water rights that were talked about also earlier today. Those are the 4 places that I can think of that water rights in our system come from. And our goal as an office is to maintain records in one place of all the water rights in the state. And so when the office was set up with the application process, that was the idea, was to have one place where you could go and find all the records on all the water rights. Unfortunately, until we finish all the adjudications in the state, we won't have addressed all of the latent claims that may be there, pre-statutory claims. That's how those come into the system, is through the adjudication process. But that's the goal of adjudication, is to make sure all of the rights get on record. So in our office, we have water right applications, we have assignments, which is when you have a water right application that isn't perfected, you can give it to someone else with an assignment form. And that's a record that you make that you deliver to our office. The statute was changed last year that requires you now to also record assignments. So they'll be in the county and they'll also be in our office. Certificates, originally in the statutes, were required to be recorded. Many people didn't do that. And the statute was changed a couple years ago to make that optional. So the only authoritative place to find certificates, water rights certificates, at this point is our office, because we're the one who issues them. We keep a copy. Theoretically, you should be able to find them at the county recorders, but in practice, that's not the case. Our office also maintains use records, and we try to maintain current ownership records. County recorders can record certificates if they are presented there. They record deeds, which evidence conveyance of water rights. And then beginning 2 years ago, they started maintaining an index of water right deeds. That's important for you to know, because if you're going to a county recorder to look for water rights, before that there was no uniform requirement that they kept an index of water right deeds. And so the system varied by county. Some of them had indexes, some of them didn't. It was very hard to find water right deeds. Going forward, we fixed that problem. We're still working on going back. Okay. So how do water rights transfers work in the state of Utah? The statute says that water rights transfer by deed in substantially the same manner as real property. So the way you convey a water right is by deed. Now, with deeds, Utah is a race to record state. So the first person who presents a deed to be recorded from the prior owner of that property has the right to that property. For instance, if he's issued deeds 4 times, the first person to record that deed has the right to the property. Question back here.
Does it need to be a specific type of deed? Is it warranty, special warranty, any of those also apply?
There are other the question was, does it need to be a particular type of deed? And the answer is different kinds of deeds have different effects. And so there may be other issues that intervene. For instance, if the owner's issued a warranty deed, there's a warranty, and so there's recourse if he's issued more than one. Okay? I mean, there's recourse in all those cases, probably. He's going to go to prison. But the person who had the first deed that recorded it is going to end up with the property. Okay? Water rights are appurtenant, or can be appurtenant, to land in Utah. This system was designed to make it so that the water could transfer easily without a lot of thought. And so if you owned water rights on your land and you sell that land, you've just sold the water right with the land. If you don't say anything to the contrary, don't reserve the water silently transfers with the land if you own a water right. That system is good and bad. The good part is that it's easy to trace who owns the water if the land's been conveyed several times and nobody's said anything about the water. The system's bad because nobody ever says anything about the water. Okay, and so that's made a problem for our office because the long-standing practice has been to silently allow water to transfer with land. Originally, the statutes required county recorders to present deeds to the state engineer that transferred water. All those that never said anything about water probably transferred water, but how was anyone to know without knowing if there was water? And so that's the bad part of that system. So you may also reserve a water right from transfer if you specifically state it in the deed. So if you don't want to transfer the water and you're conveying land and you own water rights, then you want to specifically state in the deed that the water's excluded from that conveyance. You may also transfer water rights by separate water right deed, where if you do that before you sell the land, then you no longer own the land at the time, own the water at the time you conveyed the land, and so the water doesn't transfer because it's already transferred separately. Questions on that? All right. Looks like I'm going too slow. The issues with appurtenance are several. One of them is that if you're buying land and you see water being used on the land, the assumption may be that you're going to get the water because you're seeing it used, but it only transfers as an appurtenance if that person owned the water that owned the land and conveyed the land to you. If he was using water that he was renting from someone else, or he never owned it in the first place, he can't convey what he didn't own. So you may be under the presumption we're getting water and you're not, if you rely solely on appurtenance. Shares of stock in an irrigation company do not transfer as an appurtenance. They're a security and they transfer under the rules of securities. Okay. So, as I mentioned, there are some complexities with appurtenance. The first one is that there is no good way to get a water right ownership index in the counties where deeds are recorded, because the deeds may be totally silent about the water that goes with them. The appurtenant water rights are not apparent on the deeds, and when the land and water right interests are divided because of the lack of indexes, that's not transparent. And so there tends to be a lot of disputes between those selling lands and those buying lands about what water rights they got with land. As an outcome of that, we have a somewhat broken water right ownership system. We know that on all new applications, the owner is the applicant, and so we have a complete record of that in our office. If they do an assignment, because those come to our office, we have a record of that. If they've recorded deeds at the county recorder, we likely don't have a record of that unless something additional has happened. Okay? The statute to require recorders to send deeds to us was repealed 25 years ago because it was so broken it stopped working. Well, it never did work, but it was repealed. And so we have a new system for updating our records with deeds from the counties. And that system is called a report of water right conveyance. And those who own water rights, to get our records updated so that we reflect the current owner of record, there's a process that you need to go through, that you submit the chain of title from the last person that we show on our records as owning the water through the series of deeds to your ownership. And so a report of water right conveyance needs to be submitted on every water right individually that you want ownership updated on. That's a question on the test, so you have a hint there. You need a ROC for every, which is what a report of water rights conveyance is called, is a ROC, R-O-C. They are good for one water right. You can't do multiple water rights on a ROC. ROCs come in different levels of complexity. There are two general types, what we call a full ROC, which conveys the entire water right, and a partial ROC, which only conveys part of a water right. Generally, reports of water right conveyance must be prepared by an attorney, an engineer, a land surveyor, or a title insurance producer, I guess is the common word now. The reason for that is that generally water rights issues are complex. The conveyance issues, especially with appurtenance involved, and tracking through the appurtenance to the new owner, you need to generally prepare a map. Always you need to prepare a map that shows the appurtenance moving from one water right owner to the next. And so they are generally the ones who are required to submit a ROC. If in a water or a deed, either a land deed or a water right deed, you specifically convey the water right by number, by water right number, then the owner can submit the ROC themselves. But they cannot submit it themselves if it relies on appurtenance. Only if the deed specifically states the water right number. Okay. Let me check real fast and make sure I got all the issues I wanted to make sure. Oh, I didn't cover one thing. In order to try to solve the problem with appurtenance and silence on land deeds, we got legislation introduced a couple of years ago that allows water right deed addendums. What a water right deed addendum is that is a document that you submit for recording with a deed. And what those deed addendums do is specifically state the water rights that are being conveyed with that deed. And the document is signed both by the grantor, the person selling the property, and the grantee, the person who's buying the property. The goal was to have a meeting of the minds about what's being conveyed with those land deeds. And if you have a deed addendum recorded with a deed at the county recorder, the recorder is required to submit that deed addendum to our office. And if he does, then we will update title based on that deed addendum, just like you had submitted a rock. So you can save $45 if you do a deed addendum. Yes?
Well, that's only a deed addendum, so if you do a water right deed and turn it into the county, they don't.
No, but you can also do an addendum on a water right deed. So if you're doing a water right deed, I do a deed addendum with it, and then they'll submit it. Okay? All right, I think I've told you all I want to tell you about water right ownership here. You probably had more than enough of that. What I want you to understand is that the issue is significantly more complex than I've described it, because the rules have changed over time. And so depending on when the deed was recorded, there were likely different rules in place. At one point in the past, water rights didn't transfer by appurtenance until they were perfected. The statutes now changed so that they transfer by appurtenance as soon as an application is approved. So depending on when the deed was recorded, different rules apply, and it can be somewhat complex. All right, let's move on to stream alterations. In addition to having a water right to divert water from a source in the state of Utah, if you're altering the bed or banks of a stream in Utah, there's a permit required from the state of Utah to do that. The intention when the statute was set up was to create a system that would allow you to also meet the requirements for a 404 permit in some cases. And we continue to have what we call a joint permit program operating, where the state gets a general permit from the Corps of Engineers, and if your alteration qualifies under that general permit, then getting a permit from the state will qualify for the state permit plus the Corps 404 permit. Doesn't work in all cases, but it does in some. The state's application was made a fee-based system about 7 or 8 years ago. Prior to that, they were free, but now to get a stream alteration permit in the state of Utah, there is a fee, and the fee is based on the type of entity you are. If you're a non-commercial entity, you get the cheapest price. If you're a commercial entity, there's a higher price. And if you're a public entity, there's another price. You just need to know that for the test. Okay. What happens if you file a stream alteration permit is we give notice to state and federal agencies. We address a narrow set of issues, and there's generally a very short response time. We generally issue those permits within 20 to 30 days. The approval criteria for a stream alteration permit is that it can't impair vested water rights. So if you want to make an alteration that will take water around somebody's diversion structure, that won't get approved, because that will impair their rights. We take input from wildlife agencies and public recreation agencies on whether it will adversely affect public recreation in the stream environment or endanger aquatic wildlife or diminish the natural channel flow capacity. So we will look at those specific issues, and those are the issues the permit is issued on. Approval of a stream alteration permit does not grant any rights to trespass land or alter land that you don't own. Those rights still remain with the owner. We have just given you a permit to alter the stream. Any effects to the land, you still need to resolve with the legal owner of the land. Okay. It doesn't grant other local or federal permits, except if we issue a joint permit, then it meets the requirements of the 404 requirement. And it doesn't relieve you from injury or suit by other parties if you damage property or violate other things. When you file for a stream alteration permit, we will notice the Corps of Engineers. They will tell us whether you are covered by their general permit, and so we will then issue the permit and either tell you it's a state-only permit because the Corps declined to have it be covered under their general permit, or we will issue a joint permit that covers both the state and the 404 permitting.
What constitutes a stream?
And that's always an interesting question, and the jurisdiction's a little different between the federal and the state. We consider anything that has riparian vegetation growing in it to be a stream. So generally any channel, that natural channel that has vegetation growing in it.
A channel that's only gets water in it during high flows?
A dry wash isn't a stream for our jurisdiction, for the state jurisdiction. Now it's different with the federal folks. Oh, I went wrong way. As I mentioned, there may be coverage for a 404 permit. We found over time what they'll cover has become less and less, but we still do have some coverage where we can issue joint permits. And I think that's all I needed to tell you about that. So I think we're done. Any other questions? You look like you're wore out. I don't want to pour any more in if I don't have to. Yes?
A question on the transfer of an appurtenance, as an appurtenance. A question, if there's a transfer as an appurtenance is only if the irrigation, or I mean the water right permit has been perfected?
No, that's what I was indicating. This law as it presently stands is that appurtenance is established as soon as the application is approved. So if you have an approved application and you are using that water on your land, it is appurtenant to your land.
It doesn't have to be perfected.
It doesn't have to be
Okay.
perfected
Thank you.
anymore. Okay. Anything else? All right, good luck with the test. Hope I didn't put you to sleep. I was trying to get you woke up, but we didn't do very well.